Joined now exclusively by Israel's ambassador to the United States, Ron Dermer. Welcome back to Meet the Press, Mr. Ambassador.
Good to be with you.
Let me start with asking you a simple question. What is the position of the Netanyahu government on the peace process and a two-state solution?
The same as it was when Prime Minister Netanyahu gave his speech at Bar-Ilan University. He is committed to a vision of peace, of two states for two peoples, a demilitarized Palestinian state that recognizes the Jewish state of Israel. What has changed is the circumstances over the last few years. You just talked about with Andrea what is happening in the region and the collapse of all these states in the Middle East, in Libya, in Yemen, in Syria. We have a collapse of a 100-year order in the Middle East, and militant Islam is charging into the void. That's the first thing to change. The second thing to change, which very few people have talked about over the last couple of days, is that a year ago, 10 months ago, the leader of the Palestinian Authority reached out to a terror organization and forged an alliance with Hamas. Hamas is committed to Israel's destruction. Their charter calls for the murders of Jews worldwide. They fire thousands of rockets at Israel. And what Israel believes has to happen now is that President Abbas has to break his alliance with Hamas and return to peace negotiations with Israel. If that happens and we can solve the problem of Israel's legitimate security needs, then we can get back to the peace table.
So you'll deal with Abbas. The Netanyahu government will deal with Abbas, even if he's not speaking for the entire Palestinian people, because that had been one of the critiques before, that, well, he only really runs the West Bank. Hamas runs Gaza. You can't negotiate this just with one
That
part.
was not the Prime Minister's critique. The Prime Minister has been negotiating with President Abbas.
Okay.
He was willing to do it until a year ago when Abbas made this deal. Why did the peace process collapse? Because President Abbas joined up with Hamas. You can't join up with a terror organization. Our concern, Chuck, is that a Palestinian state today would be a Palestinian terror state. So the Prime Minister is not against a demilitarized Palestinian state. He's not against, and he hasn't retracted in any way his vision that he laid out at Bar-Ilan University 6 years ago in 2009. What he's against is establishing a terror state on the West Bank, which would create not another Gaza, but 20 Gaza.
So the president is wrong when he says he takes the prime minister at his word at what he said before the election.
He didn't say what the president and others seem to suggest that he's saying, and he was very clear about it in his interview with Andrea Mitchell. He didn't change his position. He didn't run around giving interviews saying he's now against the Palestinian state. He said, I'm the prime minister of Israel. I'm responsible for the security of the country. Right now, if we establish a Palestinian state on the West Bank, on Judea and Samaria, we are going to see another armed terror base used to launch attacks against Israel. Remember, Israel left Lebanon in 2000. We didn't get peace. We got an Iranian terror base on our northern border. Israel left Gaza in 2005. We uprooted all the settlements there. We didn't get peace. We got an Iranian terror base on our southern border. Now, Iran's leaders are saying in the last few weeks that they are going to arm Palestinians in the West Bank to launch terror attacks against Israel. That the Prime Minister is not willing to agree to.
If the United States doesn't stand in the way of the United Nations imposing a framework of what a two-state solution would look like, what does that do to the relationship between the United States and Israel?
Well, we hope that won't happen. We know that the United States has stood for decades against all these anti-Israel resolutions at the United Nations, and we hope that policy continues.
And do you believe an imposed framework of a two-state solution is an anti-Israel resolution?
Well, obviously, it depends what the resolution is, but we're against imposing any resolution through the United Nations because the policy of the United States has been, for a very long time, that you need a negotiated settlement to this conflict. The only way we're going to reach peace, Chuck, is if we have the parties at the negotiating table. A United Nations resolutions will do the exact opposite. It will harden Palestinian positions, and it will prevent us not only from having peace today, it could prevent peace for decades to come, because no Palestinian leader will move from those positions that are going to be put forward at the United Nations. And here's the problem, a major problem. What the Palestinians want is they want a state, but they don't want to give Israel peace in return. Israel is in favor of a Palestinian state that would end the conflict with Israel. We are not in favor of a Palestinian state that will continue to wage war against Israel.
Let me ask you something about settlements. During the campaign, and I want to put up this from the Washington Post, reports where Netanyahu said settlement construction at Har Homa was not only to provide housing for residents, but also to deny Palestinians territory and continuity. It's a neighborhood that I initiated in 1997 in my first stint as prime minister, Netanyahu said. He said its value is that it stops the continued advancement of the Palestinians. This goes to the critique of the settlement construction, that settlement construction is all about preventing a Palestinian state. What do you say to that criticism?
No, that's not true. Look, first of all, the Jewish neighborhoods of Jerusalem are going to be part of any future peace deal. The major settlement blocks are going to be part of any peace deal. And the settlement construction that goes on, about 90% of it, is in those areas. And it's within the consensus not only inside of Israel, but everyone.
So you deny that settlement construction is about a strategic...
That's not the obstacle to peace. Chuck, this conflict has been going on for 50 years. 50 years before there was a single settlement on the West Bank. The reason why we have not resolved our conflict with the Palestinians is they refuse to recognize the right of a Jewish state to exist, period. And they don't take Israel's security concerns seriously. And in a region where states are collapsing, where you have ISIS and Iran-backed militant Islamists all over the region. ISIS is not thousands of miles away from Israel.
Right.
It's 18 miles away from Israel's northern border. Israel's security concerns have to be addressed seriously, and the only place that that's going to be addressed is not in the United Nations, it's in negotiations with Israel.
Two final questions. One, what is a bad deal with Iran? Give me, I mean, we know you're not going to get what you truly want, zero centrifuges and all this. What is a bad deal?
A bad deal has a short breakout time. Right now they're talking about a year breakout time. That leaves Iran with a vast nuclear infrastructure in place. That breakout time has to be much longer. And a very bad deal is a deal that would automatically remove restrictions on Iran's nuclear program after only about a decade. That would be a terrible deal because it would create a situation where you'd have a deal that wouldn't block Iran's path to the bomb. It would pave it. They wouldn't have to sneak into the nuclear club. They wouldn't need to break into the nuclear club. They could just walk into the nuclear club, become a nuclear weapon state. It would lead to mass nuclear proliferation in the region and would be very dangerous for the Middle East and the world.
How do you restore trust as an ambassador here in the United States? Some in the Obama administration quietly seemed to hint that if relations could improve with the prime minister if you weren't in your position. What do you say to that criticism?
I serve at the pleasure of the Israeli government and the Israeli prime minister, and as long as they have confidence in me, I will continue to do everything I can to not only advance my country's interests, but to work to strengthen the relationship between the United States and Israel. We have no better friend and ally than America. All the people of Israel know that, and we hope that the American people know as well that they have no better friend and ally in the Middle East, the one solid, reliable, democratic ally than the State of Israel, and we think we're your best ally in the world.
Do you believe the Obama administration can trust you?
Yes.
Ambassador Dermer, thanks for coming on Meet the Press.
Thank you.